you know, and not just to show kind of like bad VHS video footage of early 90s shows, but the fact that I had a garage as part of a rent-controlled house I lived in from 1990 and was only evicted out of 3 years ago. So 3 years ago, and wanting to have a total fuck you nervous breakdown about being the last person kicked out of Silver Lake for rich people. Instead, a solution sort of started where my paper archive was obtained, bought by an institution, which is to be announced, and then, my longtime friend and art historian, Amelia Jones, kind of stepped forward and had the archive moved from my garage to her garage, and cataloged everything, started imagining what it would look like and securing venues. As of COVID reality now, we're still pushing for September 13th opening at Participant Inc. in New York with related around town events, and then on to ICA LA next spring. And then there's some UK and also a Rome gallery that are possibilities within us going forward. So I thought I knew what the next 2 years was looking like until lockdown, and I was already kind of locked down working on this stuff, so I wasn't, last year I was on tour for 7 months, so this year I'm sitting tight, crawling out of my skin. So I will figure out how to take it. Let's see, to take Lisa, here we go.
Hi.
There we go. Split screen. If we can't
I
be in
know,
the same
split
room.
screen. Haven't seen your face since our quarantine Easter. Dancing with a bouquet of peacock feathers to Julius Eastman.
You have to grab a hold of it. What was that one? Get up on it.
It was beautiful.
Well, we always had that kind of romance in the daily, and just to set the context, I met you kind of after Christian death, but before rehab. Part of the 80s.
So what about this beautiful book? Oh, such an emotional experience, and Amelia Jones and Andy Campbell did the most amazing job. I'm just floored and just so excited for you.
Well,
how does it feel?
I wouldn't open it for a while. Like I'd peek and close it, and then I'd start reading a chapter that was really heavy and be like, "Oh my God, this is a lot." Either, I'm deeply moved by the people I'm involved with, both work-wise and life-wise, and usually both. But also, Amelia checked with me, digging through writings of like early writings of pieces, bad sketches, even like post, like during recovery and suicide attempts writing. Like it's really out there.
It's an amazing collection. And one that stuck out to me was the Many Men one, some split personality, so many men.
Yeah.
From Honcho. That's an amazing one because it goes deep in this, in talking about these various looks. It goes deep into the who am I, who was I, who am I going to be,
Yeah.
And that I thought was such a beautiful exploration of the self,
Well,
your writing is always so brilliant. So I mean, but that one stuck out as because I hadn't read it and it was, it really moved me.
Oh
yeah.
Well, writing's the toughest one for me. you know, of every part of my practice. Sometimes I feel like the years I tried to be a journalist, not at Hancho was write anything. Who you tricked with the Venice Biennale, like, you know, whatever. But trying to take on the tone of, say, like writing for the weekly, or the few times I've been assigned to write things for details, and then you get the edit back and you don't recognize
Right.
the writing anymore. You're like,
Right.
or you can't because you're on the 5th edit. It doesn't make, I don't know. That's not my brain. So, you know, I've always been very frank that I depend on a good editor with my writing, because I hit that insecurity roadblock, right? It's like, is this where I'm really going? You know, with
Right,
this,
but I didn't mean to interrupt you, but your mind is so facile and so brilliant, and you can parse any subject, you know, whether it's world history, whether it's science, which is, you know, what I wanted to write about with you, because I wanted, you know, people to know that there is that incredible grounding that you have that goes in your work as well, that it's not just exploring the tyranny of religiosity
right.
and mysticism, but also, you know, you've got some real, a really heavy brain, you know?
I need Jonas Salk, okay?
And I fall in love with brains, with big minds, you know? So, so you can talk about the, you know, the feeling vulnerable, or feeling like an editor is taking you somewhere that, you know, you didn't know you were going, but you know what you're doing.
Then
As a writer and as a creator.
I welcome prompts. Can we talk for a minute about our writing group? We used to have me, you, and Vaginal Davis. I'm not sure how many times we met, but we went through all 3 of ours material and wrote notes and did rewrites and reshared, and it was, I don't know, we were so triangulated, and not even similar topics, but similar aims, I think, in the writing.
Yes.
Like trying to spring a life within the writing itself, not just within the narrative. And yeah, so we would all speak. It was the perfect trio to learn and imagine.
The perfect trio. I just got a letter in the mail from Vag just the day before yesterday. And yeah, that was our coffee clutch, but we were amazingly organized and on point, you know, with bringing our pages.
We didn't even have deadlines for anything.
We had. Yeah, so I missed that.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that again.
I need the discipline sometimes. Like, kind of waking up, like, you know, freestyling doesn't quite get there sometimes. And yeah, I need human response and intellectual sounding boards from people whose work I respect. It's a one-on-one way of learning.
Right,
of growing.
Right.
Recently, I started writing again more. Well, I wrote a narrative for, you know, my first project, Premature Ejaculation, and that ended up in the book. I wrote it for Ava Wojciak from No Magazine, who's making a publication about the late Bruce Kalberg. So that made me, in my own voice, kind of go back into that story. And of course, Leon Hilton also wrote a chapter on that era. And then when Genesis George died, I was invited to write a remembrance for the Brooklyn Rail. So suddenly, even though in this COVID mind, I have like a 10-minute intense attention span. Which is why I chose, you know, like Throbbing Gristle song titles, and then the next chapter of imprint on me that they had on me throughout the years. And that made me feel like, oh yeah, this is that kind of writing where you feel satisfied. Every paragraph you feel like, oh my God, I think I caught that. And, you know, then you try to weave it back together.
Right. So what has the whole process been like for you in the making of the book? First of all, how long was the process with Amelia and Andy of, you know, creating this book?
forever and a day. No, because this started 3 years ago, but once the
Hmm.
exhibition process started, Amelia put it in gear, and I feel like she publishes 5 books a year, so she just put it
I
in.
know she's
Yeah,
amazing.
super clear. And when I hardly knew her, her quote that sort of really won me over was a pull quote in a review that said, "Ron Athey's asshole has a special place in art history." And it's like,
Yes.
she knows I like the object. so, so that that started turning into a catalog, and I wasn't like immensely hands-on, just like with Pleading in the Blood. I feel like
Mhm.
so self-conscious to sit down and read like 15 essays about yourself in a row. Of course I can't do that. I read one
Right.
here and there, I skim one that seems like I can't quite go in there yet.
Right.
So trusting the editors is a big deal, and also always kind of restating your aim. Like, what's the point of having a retrospective? What's the point of always reconfirming that you are here doing your thing, getting your shit off, whether museums, galleries, curators decide that it's your year or not? Do I want to
Right.
self-produce? I don't know. There's an inertia, that keeps going.
Right.
There's a darkness at the time of the eviction too, because I kind of felt old and tired, and I needed a break from work when I came back from England. And
Yeah.
I gave away the things I gave away to put away in my archive, or some of the things I would like to have here now, like your illustrated novel of our story. But in
Yes.
a way, I felt like I could die in that period. Like, I thought, how off the skids am I going to go?
Hmm.
I didn't want all of my stuff in a bin somewhere, because I
Right.
became more and more reckless and destructive because I was destabilized. I mean, I never keep restating the story, but I wasn't raised by parents. I was raised by extended family and craziness, and have
Right.
deep insecurities when I become ungrounded, like a sense of home. I'm a homeboy. I already
Yeah.
isolate. And I'm extremely
Right.
social and extremely into solitude, that
Right.
combo.
Right. Right.
So we're putting it out there again.
Yes. Yes. So how has it felt since you've been back in LA, like London versus LA, um, in terms of performance and even writing? What has been the difference in the reception of you in LA since you have come back, since being an expat
Yeah,
for
six
6 years?
six year. LA was a different place after 6 years. It grew up a lot.
Hmm.
There were very few
Right.
hustles here before, so I learned really early on to hit the road. So, even
Right.
when I was still doing like actions at fetish clubs and go-go dancing in between, I would go like San Francisco, New York, London, over and
Hmm.
over and that. So London was kind of my second home even before I moved there, more so than any other place.
Right.
So yeah, I moved there with a residency at the Center for the History of Emotions, followed by a
Yeah.
residency in the Department of English and Drama at Queen Mary University via Dominic, who's on next.
Yeah.
I had a lot of things, but I also got, made the bad decision of getting married, and then having to turn over my passport for a year. So I kind of dropped the ball on inertia, I don't know, there's something about when you're steady touring, steady making New York, and you're plugged in, you're in
Right.
it, and then you disappear for a few years, and you're that old blood artist. That's a kick to the side for a couple of years to boom it back up. It
Right.
was very different, but to be frank, I
Hmm.
always loved Southern California because of the quality of life. Like I come to life in sunshine. Um,
Right.
um, Also, LA didn't used to be tapped out, so you could live somewhere grand, a house falling off a hill for 400 a month, forever
Yeah.
until everyone else came here and whatever. We
Right.
had crooked mayors and council people, like everywhere. I'm
Right.
not going
Right.
to
Right.
cry down the gentra tears, but there can't
Yeah.
be an art city if everything's expensive. You just have children of rich people making art. You know,
Right.
so yeah, I try to fight that fight, I guess, and keep with, you know, obviously I'm not an outsider anymore, even though I can feel like one, but I don't have nepotism. I didn't go to any college. I didn't go anywhere. So
Right.
and maybe I don't like those restrictions. I always kind of like floating between however I want to see performance, whether it's a solo, whether it's post
Yeah.
porn, whether it's I'm turning 50, fuck you, it's a bloodbath again. I'm just
Right.
kind of responding to the time that I'm in.
So when is the retrospective that goes with the book, with the catalog?
Well,
When does that happen?
it's hard to give exact dates, but and we're proceeding in New York City at Participant Inc. as if it's going to happen in September. I haven't had an update in a couple of weeks, but somewhere around that time. And I think it's important to get back to life, you know, and also that it's a gallery show, so everyone doesn't have to be crowded together at once. Maybe we can have
Right.
a 12-hour opening so we can be a kiss, 10 at a time, or
Exactly.
whatever the deal is going to be then. But I think I don't know. I don't want to wait till the perfect time and everyone's okay to do it. I feel like I need it. I need a reason to live this year, not just to keep
Right.
cheerleading myself through another day of lockdown. Like today I walked with a mask and someone called me a faggot on the street, or, you know, like people are acting stupid now. Like it's getting, like retro violent out there in a way because everyone's so frustrated.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I don't mind being called a faggot. I was fine. But I thought, wow, is it the 80s again? Jesus. I'm going to get my Ms. 45 out, you know? Bash back.
Should we take questions? I can't, are there questions going on your screen? Maybe there aren't. And I want to be cognizant of the time. I don't know how long we've been talking.
Oh, we have more than 5 minutes. Like
Okay.
5 to
Okay.
10. Well, I think one overlap we have that we never work directly necessarily, except in gifts to the spirit, is all the like spiritualism and seeking. And I know,
Yes.
of course, I've also studied where you're from, teachings of Mary Baker Eddy, and of course her naturopath father that was a cancer doctor in the 19th century.
Right.
And then I don't know, let's call it esoterica. Like someone asked me the other day why I use the term shabby shamanism, because I think I can't like study one Hindu somebody and suddenly keep quoting that because it doesn't resonate with me.
Right.
And,
Right.
And I don't feel any chapters of Christianity, even though like somewhere in my core, the Christian still answers. So
Right.
I guess I do archetype work.
Right.
And
Right.
and all those Christian images, and you know, and going to like Orthodox Eastern Athens on ketamine with Hermes and doing, you know, I still do things like that all the time, but
Right.
plugging
Right.
into what's there instead
Right.
of
Right. Right.
scratching a circle in the dirt at the end of a
Right.
path, which I'll do that too. But
Right.
I just
Right.
wanted to bring
Maybe
that
into
up that we have
Egyptology,
yeah.
Taoism, Tibetan Buddhism, Hinduism, Vedanta, Sufism. Yeah. Yeah, there's something in all of it, you know, there's something to take from all of it.
But I don't know. I never knew how to like follow exactly. I think the time of AIDS was the last time I really went to a lot of meetings when everyone was dying in the late 80s. And it was like Marianne Williamson, Louise Hay,
Right.
Ma
Right.
G. You know, it was
Right.
so varied, and also like kind of dual diagnosis, 12-step support meetings. I mean, in that time before the 3 therapy, I felt like I held on to this saying, take what you need and leave the rest behind. So somehow I never felt in danger of coming out with an orange blanket and a misty face.
So maybe we should take some questions since there's 5 minutes left with us before Dom comes on.
Yeah. Anyone have any questions for us? I can see my scroll.
No? There's a lot of hearts of all colors.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about our travels because we had
Yes.
so many hysterical adventures. 2000 was it 2000 to Sydney, Australia, and
Yeah, that was the best. That was the best.
New Wave hotel on the harbor. Everything was perfect.
Yes.
Our hosts, who I'm still in touch with, Anya Wojak and Fiona McGregor, the writer,
Yes.
they were brilliant. And then we worked out every day at a gym that the
Every
owner
day.
trained Eartha Kitt when she was in town. So we had different eras. Like,
And we went to
velour tracksuit with the turban on, and like
yes.
one line.
And we went to a different nude beach every day. So we were there for 2 weeks, and there were enough nude beaches that we never had to go to the same one. You know, and we never went
to the end of nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and a different dance club after wandering to whatever restaurant. That was just.
I shouldn't talk about Paris. I know we were at Paris, and then we couldn't deal with it, so we went to Zurich, of all places, for our days off.
Yes, and that was a beautiful time. Eating really good chocolate in the countryside with, sausage and fries, and we saw the Black Madonna at that church. Beautiful times, yeah.
Well, I won't go somewhere and work and turn around. I need time to like explore. So that's probably why I never like properly break even either. I just like, stay. I've kind of made Athens a home away from home when I'm on Euro tours, because
Right.
I don't need that 12-hour flight now. And plus, if we're doing it like masked and stuff now, I feel like, oh my God, how much Xanax would I have to take to like sit still and not panic?
I love all the vicarious living that I do through you in Athens. I've never been to Greece, and that it always looks so spectacular, and like you're really alive and lit there.
I love the myths, so you're like driving, oh, there's Delphi and there's Cassandra.
Yeah.
I do love all that.
That's something you should write about. You should write about Greece and the history, what the history is for you.
I have a video I would like to film there. That's a little spring off of Acephalus, but it's called Queen Pasiphae, the Witch Queen of Crete, a glory hole origin story.
Right.
This myth, enchanted cow was carved, and then she fits herself inside, so that the sacred bull that Zeus gave the king fucks her through a hole in a wooden cow, and that's of course a proper Cretan myth, and
right.
part of a Cephalus monster, that's Dionysus versus the crucified one.
Right.
Mixing myths. So did Nietzsche.
Yes. So it's probably time for me to say so long, and I love you.
I love you. Thank you for dropping in today.
Loved it so much. Thank you.
I'll see you in the flesh soon.
All right. And I think I just hit the X here, and I'm out. Okay. Mwah.
And now, if I do this right, Dr. Dominic Johnson. Hello.
Hello.
You're why we're here at midday in LA, because I wanted to get the London timeline possible within this talk, and all of our people there and you.
It's 8:30, so it's early-ish, early late.
But for lockdown, you probably had dinner like 3 hours ago. It's like,
Exactly.
I cook earlier every day. It's ridiculous.
How are you doing?
2 days good, and then I'll have a dark day where I feel like everything's caving in just for no reason. But
yeah,
I know what I need to do to perk myself up, and I do have to have productive days. It's not just about don't chill out, relax. It's been months. Like you have to hit the ground running when this motherfucker lifts.
totally. I'm very happy to have this.
Yay.
Well,
let me hold up our previous, which is this, which was maybe volumes.
I mean, it's so interesting seeing it because when we did this one, it felt like it didn't feel like there would never be another book, but I don't think it was something we were planning. We wanted this to be some sort of authoritative statement or something, recuperation of you. And one of the things that's so amazing looking at this one is that we kind of thought not that we thought you didn't have an archive, but there wasn't one that's consolidated in the way that this has discovered or constructed. And it was quite, there's things in here I have not really seen before or that were new to me. Lots of things I have read before, but not some of them. So I just wanted to actually, one of the most interesting contributions of this is your, difficult to find writings, but also your private ones. And I just wanted to read a few choice ones that jumped out at me. And then
I'm already blushing, but I'll reel it in.
Well, and just if anything jumps out at you or you have something you want to say about the kind of context, just go for it.
Yeah.
But so for people who don't have the book, it's got sort of pages which are just literally reproduced, writing. So there's one from from late 80s. In your recovery writing, you wrote, "When I hated myself, the body wasn't a holy temple. Now I compete to keep my temple, the most adorned, anointed, decorated Ark of the Covenant. Exhibitionists shall inherit the earth." And then there's the later one from the early 90s, 1992, where you say something which I've heard you say elsewhere, but I haven't seen it written down in this original text, where you say, "Radical artists and hardcore queers, my role models like David Warnerovich are all dead or dying of AIDS. When art gods die, the flow is cut and there's nothing left for us to do but idolize them." This little one-page note, "Dyke women they ground me." And this one I love as well, where you just a little drawing that says, "I prophesize a year of total sensory deprivation."
That's apt.
I'm grabbing these things literally just because they jump. "Or a blonde bombshell, yet everyone wants to cast me as the mother of three for a Tide commercial."
I've been on a diet pill.
Can you say something about those kinds of writings, which are kind of part jottings, part diary, part automatic writing? I think even.
Yeah, well, I think now we can look back at people who died of AIDS, but being in it, in the moment, like that weekend that David Warnerovich died, I just remember thinking, okay, and there's no one left but the screamers and the horrible, more political people. And I don't know, I just felt like everything upended and people filled the shoes of the miracle people. And we ended up where we are now, kind of. I don't know. I felt like it was a disaster. It was for me personally. I lost the ability to have a mentor. I don't know. I didn't know how to connect then, and I wasn't connecting through, other channels people connect through, like schools. I didn't have a professor to lead me to these other writings, so I always went, sought out people. Including you, people, readerly people, like, what next? Okay, if I can't get my head around this, and I've already read No Future, what's the next thing in line with that?
And
future
what
is
about,
hopeless.
and see, can you say something about, I mean, I'm assuming you wrote those, some of them are actually scripts or sketches for works, but a lot of them seem really private, or, you know, they're texts you're writing for your own purposes. And now to see them as archival objects or as things reproduced in a book, I imagine things that will be in a exhibition in a vitrine or something too. Can you say something about that shift from the private and the personal to this much more public archival function?
Well, I think going back to the kind of showgirl outlook of myself, I never,
Yeah.
I never protected the private.
Yeah.
So that was my entryway into the topics, into the materials, into the polemic. So while I don't have like this necessarily the same message and all that, especially some of the more program writing,
Yeah.
it's still part of what formed me or formed the times.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the context keeps changing. So I think maybe it's context more than anything to look at that, like pulling out of this reality into that one. And if you parallel look at what piece I was making at the time, I mean, my desk is still littered with weird pieces of paper like that because I don't know, it's not enough for it to be in my brain or on an electronic tablet. I still scratch and scrape, and yeah, and yet I've never particularly been someone that does drawing.
When we were doing the book together, this book, I think one of my like memories of that was that you found it quite challenging at times, like having people pick over your past or make sense of you or explain you in a way, and seeing it come together in such a sort of concrete, almost like limiting fashion. Did you feel, in a way, this book is even more invasive in a way, in the interesting way, because it's sort of objects dragged out of your home and things which are sort of a little bit secret or occulted? Was it a similar process, a different process?
No, I feel like because I was actually put out of my home, and in a way to myself, I thought, who knows what the next chapter is, if there is one.
Yeah.
So I actually, you know, it was, I don't know how to describe it. It's not that it has to live on, but it just bears witness that I was here and this was my story, and it's not, it's the way it plays out. Even the idea of saying I have a retrospective and I have a second book is saying this is where I'm at, but it's not actually so. Like, you know, it's not so in a typical way anyway.
Yeah.
And when you get up in it and you realize what kind of work you have to do to make it happen or keep it propped up, it's less of a fantasy. So I think in the years, well, since we started working on the other one to now, what has it been, like 7 years? Longer.
Yeah, it was 2013 that it came out, I think, and I can't even remember when we started it, but at least 2010, earlier, I think. So
I did do some growing up in the meantime, and something about the last few years of my life, I've had a reinfusion of energy. Like I can just stay on tour, I can just take commissions. I don't know. I have a focus I never had continuously before.
Yeah.
In the 90s, the way I made work, I had a full-time job, and I go to events, and I did things at clubs, and on late at night and on the weekends, and at 6 in the morning, I worked on art. And you know, yeah, I was in my 30s. Now I'm almost 60, and I'm fucking tired. So I have to like decide. Now I feel there's a relief in that. It's like, of course, everything's okay and right. Maybe I exposed too much here, and maybe. This is pedantic and that's shrill, but there's a bigger body of work building up the way it all adds up together.
Yeah. And my essay is this one, Divine Fire, RonAthe in Europe. And it's sort of very factual in a way. It just tries to sort of tell a history of you in the 90s, which isn't the history of you in the US in the NEA culture wars, which is my essay in this one. But I think there was something, it felt useful. I mean, Amelia asked me to write something about you and Europe, but I think I just really wanted to make it the story, a story. And so I just wanted to ask you about that, or if you see if you want to talk about it. That you were kind of, I mean, one way to tell the story is that you were sort of rescued by Europe, when you were suddenly not really able to be supported in the US. And for me, that was, interesting things where there was a kind of potential for touring. There was funding for institutions. There was more receptive audiences, I think, and more kind of, in some ways, maybe a little bit more sophisticated in relation to receiving what you were doing. There was a broader context of all these other artists, which didn't mean harking back to the 70s, but were Franco B, Kira O'Reilly, Stellark, Orlon, like these people who were working in Europe, Marceli Antonez Roca. Can you say something all about that, like you and Europe in the 90s?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that happened in '94 was, like a car crash in the U.S. and essentially put me on a 10-year blacklist at the institutions that had never properly shown me anyway. Yeah. So there would have been no future here except on a crusty DIY self-production sort of level. ICA London was really moving this discussion forward with all of this type of body art meets technology meets post porn, and I don't know, though, and those relationships carried on. I mean, the new theater festivals I did in Europe at the same time, which the ICA did open the door to, like going to Bordeaux, going to Copenhagen, and a lot of those centered around either academic conferences. Or just put me in a context of other people that were like circus artists, like Delaguarda in France when they were in France. Of course, it was an exciting contest, and it also raised my standard. Like when I came back and was getting booked, it was like, my fee isn't the contingency to make the work with, and then I'm like minus broke at the end of it. I just learned a little bit what it takes to make a production really work. And it wasn't until 2014 at the Hammer Museum properly produced Sebastiani. And that's when John was still alive, Sage was with us, Divinity, David Harrow. It was amazing. Gotten funding a few times, so I'm not illegal, pornographic, scandalous troublemaker. And also, the new Jesse Helms don't fund art anyway. Now it's like weird billionaire businessmen at all the institutions on both sides and weird corporations. So it's almost like the culture wars talk is almost non-existent. Like when I went to the Walker for the 25-year anniversary, it's kind of like, this is obsolete. This isn't even wearing, no one's having to behave for the senators anymore. Thank God, I mean, yeah. But going back to the fit of Europe, I mean, I don't know. It was a good time in the 90s, and when I lived there, like especially even up to that, I could get an Arts Council grant for a going away show at the Coronet through the PG Body Probe, and then do the next night in Rome. It was like boom, boom. And, it was proper and able to happen really fast. I do treasure that period, and of course was excited in October to have a 7-city tour, and the entire month of October between Glasgow and London. The whole game. Yes.
Well, I mean, so another thing about that moment that I write about in the chapter is that you were sustaining this double kind of presence, which is both in the kind of legitimate art venues like the ICA or similar, and then also even sometimes on the same night performing at Fist or Torture Garden or clubs. I mean, I still find that kind of wild. Not just that you were performing on the same day, but that you were able actually to negotiate those different spaces. I don't know, like in the images, you can even see you're wearing the same costume, that you've gone literally in the costume, or chucked in the taxi and put it back on.
Yeah.
Can you say something about that, like that kind of coexistence of worlds, or whether they were the same world crossing over, or what was happening in that kind of relationship between the two kinds of space?
Well, I think it, you know, going back just a little earlier, how I paid for work being a non-funded artist was between Club Fuck and Cinematic and Fetish Balls, I would actually make good enough fees to buy props and costumes, which would keep adding up to the big performance or video inserts if there was like a video backdrop and the thing. So I paid for work by performing. And probably, and it was very, very dependent on that crowd energy.
Yeah.
Of people who didn't necessarily come to see me, people who were standing, people who were drunk, people who were on ecstasy. What a great crowd. It's like roaring. And then you go to the nice art center. I went to I did one Euro show where I think everyone was over 80 and was like a Lacanian. And it was like so dry. Like you have to like, what, you know, I guess you can become dependent on certain energies. I mean, this was always how I felt about why Johanna Went was so dynamic. Because if you open for or play on a bill with like Black Flag or the Germs, just hit it. You can't just be like, with, let me leave 70s people alone. Like, I can be semi-minimalist.
And maybe sticking with the Europe theme, I think, you know, some of the most memorable of your performances that I've seen were some of the later ones in Europe. For example, the ones that really are like seared in my brain are in 2006, the Solar Anus at the Hayward, and then the like legendary 30th anniversary at the National Review. Can you say something about those? Because I mean, I think they're both like iconic in their own ways, but they're also just so over the top. Can you say something about them? Yeah,
I did Solar Anus between 1998 and 2002. I think I performed in something like 20 cities. And so I put it away, but then when the Hayward Gallery had this undercover surrealism and the Visions of Georges Bataille show, Lee Adams produced a night within that, Monster in the Night of the Labyrinth. And I was more than willing to bring it back. So yeah, there's another part of me besides wanting to be with screaming druggy people. I wanted to be in that hardcore West Bank gallery, Georges Bataille, like where it sat in a context of the legacy of surrealism. So that was a pretty amazing night. And, you know, it just felt fully like everyone was with it, with every act that night. And was the NRLA the other one? Well, you know me, I never try to like whitewash what I'm doing. Like the self-obliteration was real, you know, I was creaking towards 50. Of course, New York City got the final version of that when I turned 50, but the glass wig, blood, you know, immense amount of blood after kind of pulling away from blood for a while. But, you know, that room was probably double or triple capacity. Would you say? Like, it was shoe canned in and it was extra hot. You could smell the cells of the blood in the back of your throat, even if you were 10 people away. And once a few people fainted, it just like, I don't know. And then you talk about your part that I'd never had anyone want someone else to intervene on me. I've never been considered that much of a self-harmer. So, and then especially at like probably 49 years old at that time.
Yeah. I mean, it was, there's a great essay in our book by like Tim Etchells, who just writes about it only through rumor, and that, you know, that you like the blood was spraying from your eyes and that you had died, and that, you know, this incredible like gossip machine in sort of I don't know, sort of like that it's this viral dissemination of, you know, inaccurate information. It was an interestingly powerful event. Yeah, which was a lot like the Walker was all hearsay as well. Like that was like hearsay of things that didn't even happen. So yeah, I guess you could say that's part of the performance, but you know, it's not one of my aims necessarily to create scandal. Maybe to confront, maybe to push the line, like, you know,
push the decency lines or what people expected, especially at different times.
Yeah.
You know, and to be really clear about the PE had porno-ish images in it, but it was really like this polarization in the AIDS pandemic where it became like good girls versus nasty girls, where it's just like, and in some ways, aging is the same thing. You get like your peers going, Han, it's time to put it away. And like, it's like, no, I think I'm going to do a self-fisting performance. Fuck you. And find context. I do a year of research trying to contextualize it, and I never quite find anything. Oh well, you know, I didn't have the translation of Preciado yet. Then to assist me.
Yeah. Another, just like from a question from somewhere else is I introduced earlier in the lockdown. I introduced A.A. Bronson, and he said this. He said I asked him about that. He uses this term, "the asshole is the revolution," and he says a lot of negative thoughts can be set free by working with the asshole. But in order to do so, you will have to come to the position in which it can be loved and pleasured like any other part of the body. Telling someone they have a beautiful asshole is a revolutionary statement. It's hard for most people to accept. And when he was saying that, I really thought of you, because that's been your sort of, it could be perceived as your like mission in some ways as well. What can
Especially
you
during solar anus time, I have people like clutching their pearls in line to tell me how affirmative it was, and often like straight guys just suddenly thought different about their rear end in a public way. Yeah, I'm anal-centric. It's true. So
but
much
that sense of it being like a unlocking of neuroses and fears, and is that part of the project too?
I don't know. I know too many crazy bottoms for that to really add up to that kind of freedom. I'm not going to go that far with it, but it is a good thing to unhinge.
I mean, another question I was thinking about was, so Larry Kramer died this week, and there has been quite a lot recently just that points to the apparent overlaps or similarities between the height of the AIDS crisis and the coronavirus pandemic. For example, there was on social media the other day was circulating this image of the reporting of the 100,000 deaths in 1992 and how it was sort of not really seen as a particularly newsworthy story and so on. And I was thinking, like, as soon as all this started, I did think of you in terms of like whether this, does this remind you of that moment in some ways, or are there like important differences that we need to remember, or can you say something about that?
Well, I guess what was so significant about that period was the shame and judgmentalism and the feeling that because everyone, you know, I was like in a dual group, like IV drug users and the gays. So you know, it felt more personally apocalyptic. You know, certain governments are bungling it more than others. I never switched back into that mode because I think the least of the AIDS pandemic for me was the fear of dying.
Yeah.
You know, now get me closer to an intubator and I'll say it does remind me of that.
Yeah.
You know, but actual just prophylaxis and isolation and things that we're all having to do. And then like knuckleheads being mad at people. And, you know, it's starting to get violent here in really dumb ways.
Yeah.
So I hope like severe lockdown ends soon. It's embarrassing. Time goes by anyway, whether you're quitting smoking, getting off drugs, or sitting out the coronavirus. You know, it'll be next year. Yeah. And just trying not to lose it in the meantime. But yeah, I don't find easy AIDS parallels because that was so like apocalypse has arrived just for my people. Yeah.
Should we check if there are any questions? I think there were some questions earlier. Please put some questions in if you want Ron to answer one. Are there any? There was some really ages ago, but there's a lot of other stuff. Hang on, let me just scroll through.
Scroll. Yeah.
There's lots of love. There's lots of asshole beautification. There isn't. Okay, anybody got a question? And ask it now, otherwise we won't have time. Maybe not. Well, someone asks, are you still doing body work, Ron?
Oh, I'm not doing COVID body work. That was the first thing gone. Even, yeah, I remember the last person I worked on like the 2nd of March or something, and I was already reading news. I was starting to go like, being on all up in someone for 90 minutes is very up close and personal. And I do miss the touch, and my relationship to body work is kind of leaving my bullshit and going into somebody's, somebody's body, energy, the connection there. So that's a balanced part of me I am missing, but no, I'm not doing it.
Let's do some quick fire questions. So which performance was most significant to you? I assume of your own.
Oh, I think Solaranus was the most perfect because it just happened in 2 weeks. It was made. So.
What are your thoughts on Marina Abramovich? Let's skip that one.
I'm gonna leave her alone. I'm being generous these days, by the way, with everyone.
There's a question, where do you see your work moving forward? Yeah, so like, where is performance for you now? Is blood in the mix?
I feel like the strategy I have is that it's hard to know what climate is after this, but I don't think it's going to be one with lots of extra arts money. So yeah. I'm thinking of other configurations of evenings of actions I've put together with Divinity, Invitation to Yin Yang, which would be 3 movement pieces and 1 kind of action from a previous work. So it could have human printing press, or it could have pistol poem. So I'm especially because of the retrospective show, I'm thinking of ways to show work instead of just sitting it out because, oh, I don't have enough money to make a new piece. I'm still showing Acephalous Monster. So things are on hold, the places that it may show at. But besides that, I'm going to do, I don't know, I like the evenings I did, or Resonate, Obliterate, where it was like me and Julie Tolentino, but then the first version we brought in Franco and Juliana, everyone doing their own work, and then a few collaborations. So it's like short acts. Yeah. Yeah, we've also did another version with Castles, and more recently Cyclic with Castles and Fauna at the Biosphere 2. More stuff like that. I want to keep moving. I want to keep performing. So I'm going to work with the times.
Okay, we'll do a quick fire. What are your rituals for preparing for a performance, either for yourself or for other performers?
I stretch. I save busy work like beating for the last second. I don't know. I start crawling out of my skin. I do get super nervous before. Try to do vocal warm-ups. Just preparing, but I don't have a yogi preparation for performing. One shot of liquor as you're walking out.
What's any good Roz memories?
Oh well, lots. First love and a creative relationship. We busted out of the Inland Empire together. I don't know. The PE. Whoever opens the door, that door is always the most important door.
What about, so there's a question about, let me actually, okay, so, well, it just says what your performances as Saint Sebastian, maybe say something about Saint Sebastian, especially as he's the saint of plague.
Yes, I feel like I've been researching Saint Sebastian for 40 years and keep finding out more relevant details, like that his coins would be reprinted in times of like cholera more recently. And of course, the Mishima, etc. I do worry now it's becoming like the gay angel. So it's definitely in the can.
What about, I'm losing track.
Gay muscle angel.
Oh, there's a question. Okay, well, okay. can you please elaborate on the relationship between IV drug use and body manipulation, body modification, I guess?
Ooh.
That's a trick. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, they're not part of the same practice, that's for sure. I found when I've been trapped in periods of IV drug use back in the early 80s, that those are the only periods where I didn't have an artistic practice.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll leave that because I'm always trying for preservation.
Jennifer has a question about, tell folks about the recordings with Dave at Harrow.
Oh, and of course, one of the looking backs is by collecting all the texts that I could, even watching, like listening to bad tapes and transcribing them, I collected all the texts from performances from PE to current, including what I call appropriated text, like by taking Dene or Bataille and re-editing it until it's something that I could say or memorize or that's consolidated. Genesis let me do that with Esoterrorist. So I've been doing live sets with Dave and with guests. Like Lisa was her first guest, Michaela Tobin was her second. So it's kind of a electronic spoken word vocal performance night that we've only done twice now before lockdown, but the last one was just before lockdown for the Phantoms book release. Yeah, so David Harrow at Bandcamp has those recordings, or my website links to that same link.
And there's a question here, what's the difference between porn or pornographic?
To actually arouse you. And post-porn performance can be a rebellion. It can upset everything. Yeah, the way porn, the context is everything. When porn is viewed by a mixed audience, even just straight up porn, it takes on something different. I think taking act of penetration within your body. I don't know. I'm not having a live orgasm show. You know, it really did start as a defiant act, like the Rod and Bob post-AIDS boy show thing was kind of you know, it's many things, just like blood is many things. There's many things except for erotic porn. Yeah. I think that there is quite a line, especially in my work. But, you know, I know Diana Torres, porno-terrorisms work well, Rosio's work well. And, yeah, they go between ritual and temper tantrums. And, yeah, they're another way of expressing. I think they go way beyond words. Or innuendo. It's real. Yeah. Is that a bell? That's my old ship bell. Oh, what's the difference for you between reenactment and repetition in performance? Yeah, maybe say something about repetition or reenactment, especially with the Julie Tolentino's essays actually in both books. But the latter one about her kind of live archiving. How do you, and maybe also in the context of the exhibition, how do you feel about the idea of reenactment of works that you won't or can't re-perform yourself? I see it as like this, maybe the same piece, but a new piece. The way, like, I don't do pieces once, so I show a piece for 3 or 4 years, and it keeps changing until it arrives there. And I see the same way if I put it on someone else's body, things are going to change. Yeah. Based on that person's body, their own boundaries. Yeah. We're getting notifications from Andy or from Andy saying we're going to cut out any minute. So okay, so that we're not done, so that it doesn't happen too unceremoniously. I won't erase it. So we have a record. Thank you guys for tuning in today. It was amazing. Yeah, lovely to talk to you, and it was great to hear you and Lisa as well. Yeah. And thank you to